in Canada. And I hope to share some things with you about my gardening and the seeds that I've been saving. Belt that's at the top. This is a wampum belt in which I was able to put in a row of wampum seeds and wampum beads rather, to represent the sharing of seeds between Gandege, Tyendinaga Seed Sanctuary, and the Sisters of Providence in Kingston. So if you look down at the lower part of the slide, that's me putting on my one row. So this was a community project between those two groups taking place at Tyendinaga. Next slide, please. There are curriculum connections here for teachers. So science under sustainability and stewardship, health, healthy eating, and social studies. So they're more detailed there if you want to read, but you can also make the connections to the ministry documents online as well. Next slide, please. So in my seeds presentation, I'm going to introduce myself. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. We'll do a land acknowledgement, some terminology. I'm going to have a little show and tell to show you some seeds that I've saved and seeds that I will be planting this year. Offer you a challenge, a very simple challenge, but something to keep you occupied and hopefully pique your interest about seeds. There's an extension activity, and I'm going to leave you with a couple of videos that I would like you to watch and discuss as a class. So my name is Dianne Sedore McCoy. I am a retired teacher from Hastings Prince Edward District School Board. I am qualified K-12, but spent most of my career in the intermediate grades, as well as working in curriculum services at the board office in Indigenous education. I retired and moved to this area, so I'm now a cultural advisor for Upper Canada School Board. So the land acknowledgement I want to talk about is recognizing that the land that we're on here and that the Upper Canada School Board is on Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe territory. And it was a territory that they shared, which is expressed in the one dish, one spoon wampum, an area to share because it was an area that both nations got their food from. So they came to an agreement that they would be stewards of the land, that they would take care of the land, the waters, because they knew that those were the sources of sustenance for them. So I want us to always be mindful when we're out and about in this area that we acknowledge the people who were here first, that were here before, and that are still here and still recognize this land as a resource for their survival. Next slide, please. So a couple of quotes here. We do not own the seeds, we borrow them from our children. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about seeds and why that expression is really important. The other one at the bottom is Radinan Hayantos, which is the seed saving sanctuary in Tyendinaga, Gandege. So they call themselves, they are the farmers of seeds. So the Haudenosaunee were well known for their agricultural skill, especially the practice of planting the three sisters, which is corn, beans, and squash. The pictures that you see there, so most of the photographs you will see in this slideshow, I have taken myself. This particular photograph is of hickory nuts and or Onungara Osokwa. So hickory nuts, as a child, we used to harvest these. We would save them. A lot of us kids would go and pick them from the neighbor's yard once they'd fallen on the ground, and they have a husk on them. You peel the husk back and it's a hard shell. So we would crack them on a rock with a hammer and use whatever we could to get the meat out of them. And they're very sweet tasting. They're in the same family as a pecan or pecan, whichever way you say it. And we would use them just to eat as is, as a snack, but also in cooking. But as I was saying, the Haudenosaunee people were experts at agricultural. And the three particular plants that they considered the sustainers, so corn, beans, and squash. Corn is onunste in Mohawk, bean osaheda, and squash onunusura. So these are called the three sisters or the sustainers because they are what provided the largest source of nutrients and food for the people. Next slide, please. So I want you to think about why seeds are important, right? So I'm going to give you a few questions just to think about when you're having your class discussions, or if you're out and about, or during this workshop. So what seeds do we eat? We eat a lot of seeds. So think about what seeds you might eat. How do seeds spread? How do they spread in nature in order to naturally, not always be planted by a person, but how they naturally spread? Why is seed saving and propagation important? So propagate, we're going to talk about what that term means. So why are those important? Why is the diversity of plants important? And how can you ensure that plants continue to thrive? So those are some things I want you to think about as we continue the session. Next slide, please. So this is a particular book I have, and I don't know if you'll be able to find it in your Learning Commons online resources, but hopefully you can. If not, look for some other books about seeds. So this is one possible resource you could use. But when you're reading any of these stories that are available through your school or the Learning Commons or online, try to pay attention to anything in the story that relates to plants or seeds, right? So have a look. This particular story I really like because there's a lot in it about seeds and plants that you're able to discover. But if you don't have this book or able to get this book, look for something else that you can read in your class or on your own. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit about terminology. So some words that I've used, I've already used a couple of these, but I'll use them again probably. Diversity, biodiversity, propagation, sustainability, sanctuary, alt, monoculture, and polyculture. So in these photographs, the one with the wheelbarrow with all that variety of foods, those are things from my garden last year. So there's beans, tomatoes, basil, there's sunflowers, there's different kinds of squash, there's pumpkins. Those are just some of the things that I grew. But I want you to be aware of what variety of foods you can grow in your garden. And over on the other side at the top, you'll see different kinds of corn. We're used to pretty much yellow corn, maybe peaches and cream, which is sort of white and yellowish. But there's a wide variety of corns, that are used in different ways. Some is just for seeds, some is to dry, to turn into meal, some is eaten on the cob, some is used for popcorn. But I wanted you to be aware that there is a wide variety of corn, much more than what we normally see at our local grocery store or the farmer's market. The same with at the bottom under the wheelbarrow, those are a wide variety of apples. And there might be a few favorites you have, either a Macintosh or Red Delicious, or those ones that we're familiar with are common. But these ones are just rated from their sweetness to their tartness, so the amount of sugar that's in them. My favorite is a Royal Gala apple, but I've tried many varieties. But I want you to also be aware that there are many varieties of different types of fruits that we don't often get to see. But I want you to realize that there's a diverse group of fruits and vegetables out there available. Next slide, please. So we're going to look at the terminology. And diversity simply means a variety or a range of types of things. And in this case, we're talking about diversity of plants. Biodiversity, right, is all variety of life, plants and animals, everything found on Earth, as well as the habitats in which they live. Plant propagation, so this is the process of creating new plants from existing plants. So these are things like plant cuttings. There are certain plants you can just take a cutting from. You can either keep it in water till it roots, or you can plant it directly in the soil. Tree grafting, so this is used a lot in fruit trees, where you can actually graft a limb from one tree, graft it onto another tree. You have to use special chemicals to help the tree adhere and take to the new tree. And plant splitting. So if you have perennials in your garden, you can actually just dig down in, split them open, and move it to a new location to make a new. Sustainability means to avoid the depletion of natural resources while meeting our own needs, but without compromising the needs of future generations. So we always make sure to sustain something that even when we've used what we need, we leave enough for the future. Okay, next slide, please. Sanctuary. Sanctuary simply means a place of protection or safety. And the reason this is included in here will become clearer toward the end when you watch one of your videos. So when we talk about a seed sanctuary, you'll have more understanding of this word. A vault is simply a room, a building, or a compartment for storage or safekeeping. Monoculture is the cultivation of a single crop in a given area. So when you're driving down the road out in the country, you might see acres and acres and acres of just one crop. It might be field corn or feed. It might be wheat. It could be soybeans, but over a large acreage. Polyculture is the cultivation of a variety of crops in a given area, in a large area. So it could be a home garden, but it might be a farm to market plot. So a very large piece of land, which a variety of crops are grown in order to take to market. All right, so that's polyculture. And you might understand mono means one, poly means more than one. And those are sort of parts of words you'll hear in math as well. Something that means one. Sometimes you'll hear that mono in art. So monochromatic means one color. So mono and poly, so they mean one or more than one, many. Next slide, please. So I know that you've probably heard the Ohunda Gariwatekwa, or the Thanksgiving address, where we send greetings to things in the natural world. So to send our greetings is Te Yeti Nuarados. Send them our greetings. Now I've only included 6 of the elements here. There are many others, and you've probably heard the address before in class or in a workshop. But I'm going to talk just about a few. So Ohunde Sum'a, Danung Odera Sum'a, that's all the grasses and all the roots. So if you think of grasses as some of them as foods, some of them as medicines, and Odera Sum'a are the roots. Lots of roots that we eat: carrots, potatoes, beets, right? Onunkwa Sum'a, these are plants that are medicines. So for the Haudenosaunee people, certain plants provided relief for certain illnesses or for pain. So if you think of white willow, that is actually something that the chemical in that is used in modern day aspirin, right? So for pain relief and fever relief. Junhekwa, I told you, was the 3 sisters: corn, beans, and squash. And they have a relationship to each other. They're grown together for a reason, which I'll talk about later. Gahik Sum'a is the fruits, but the leader of the fruits is what's pictured there, and that's the strawberry. Extremely important to the Haudenosaunee people. the first berry of the season. So they will save some sap water from when they collect sap for making syrup, save it, and they'll use that with the strawberry, and they make this delicious strawberry drink, which we drink during special occasions in the summer, once the berries are ripe. Oguira Suma is trees. For Tyndanaga, we use Garunda Suma, but for other dialects, they use Oguira Suma. And the leader of that is the maple, the wata maple tree. And you might want to just think about why you think they've chosen the maple to be the leader. And the last pictured there is Ojinutwa Suma, which are the insects. Now they pictured the bee. The leader is not the bee, it's the firefly. I'm not really sure why, but that might be something you might want to investigate. But bees are important. I've included that because we need those to pollinate all those plants, right? So we need to make sure that we are appreciating everything that comes from Mother Earth, everything that sustains life, right? So we need to be always mindful of where our food comes from and to protect the land that it grows in. Next slide, please. Okay, before I show you some of my seeds, I just want to talk a little bit about what you see on this slide. So my grandson, who's been home for the past year from school, we had him do a math activity. So this is one pumpkin. So from this one pumpkin, he got more than 400 seeds. So we divided them into groups of 10. So he did a little math activity. So you can see how many seeds you can get from simply from one plant, one pumpkin. And if you can save some of those, you would have enough to share with friends, with neighbors, to plant your own and get more pumpkins again. Also on this slide, you'll see some pictures. These are just a few, but some pictures where you can match the seed to the plant that it comes from, right? We're not always familiar with those. Some are easy to understand, easy to see because we've seen the plant and the seed before. Some not so much, but the link at the bottom is to a variety of activities, but one is a game in which you can try to match the seeds to the plant. So if you want to spotlight me, I will show you some of my seeds. So now this jar, as you can see, all pumpkin seeds. One pumpkin, all those seeds from one pumpkin. Now, this is the pumpkin that I asked my grandson to count all the seeds from. So I saved these and I'll be planting them this year. You can save them to plant, but you can also toast these, season them, and eat them as a snack. Very healthy. So a little riddle I left my grandson with was, if I have this many seeds from one pumpkin, and if I grow a new plant from every single one of these seeds that grows multiple pumpkins, how many possible pumpkins could I get? I'm just going to leave you with that. So there's probably about 450 in here. One pumpkin. Now, the other thing that I grew a lot in my garden were sunflowers. And I love sunflowers. So I like to call them the fourth sister. So there's my sunflower seeds, which I saved, which I will be planting this year. And I always find it amazing that a seed that small, this size, a seed this size can actually grow a plant as high as 18 feet, right? Because there are different varieties of sunflowers. And some are called Russian giant, and they'll grow 12 to 15 to 18 feet tall with huge flower heads on them. And I will show you a picture a little later on. But I save the seeds to grow again. Sunflower seeds you can also eat as well. You take the shell off and you eat what's inside. You can buy bags of sunflower seeds, but I leave them for the birds. So if you plant those in your garden, chances are the birds will go after your sunflower seeds and leave the rest of your plants alone. So that's part of the reason I plant them. Plus, I think they're a beautiful plant, right? Some other seeds that I saved for this year. So these are my bean pods, right? Bean pods. Now, I don't know if you can hear, but if I shake, there's beans inside. Now, you grow beans like this and they're green. I grow a variety that's purple, which I really like, and has a wonderful chemical reaction. You pick the bean purple, but as soon as the heat temperature changes its color, it changes from purple to green. They're delicious fresh, so you can pick a bean right off the plant and eat it just like that. You can dry them, save them, and you will end up with these. So the white ones, people will soak. You can make bean soup. You can add them to a stew. Right, so this is the part of the bean that you keep and you save. Right, these are the purple ones. They look slightly different. That's what the purple seed would look like. So I've saved those for planting. The other seeds I saved were some dill. So if you like dill pickles, dill pickle chips. So these are tiny, tiny, tiny little seeds. They're hard for you to see. Hard for you to see. So you can keep these just as is and use them in soups. You can use those to make dill pickles, or you can use the head of the dill plant itself. But so I will get a lot of dill seeds. You get a lot of dill seeds off one plant. So I kept a few to plant because I do like to make dill pickles. So I grow the cucumber, I grow the dill. You add onion and some garlic and make delicious dill pickles. The other seeds, so this is my three sister set. So there's corn, beans, and squash, and sunflowers in there all together. So I will separate these out. These are a different kind of bean. So these are a much smaller bean. Much smaller bean, right? Also corn. Corn looks very unusual. It's like the kernel, but it's all shriveled up. So all shriveled up. Now, that corn you'll plant those in a hill. And the reason that you plant those three plants together, corn, beans, and squash, they all support one another. It's a symbiotic relationship, meaning they take care of one another. So a corn plant, the corn removes nitrogen from the soil. It needs a lot of nitrogen to grow. So the corn plant gets tall, and beans are grown with it because beans add nitrogen back to the soil, but they need support. So it's like a pole bean. So it grows up along the corn stalk. And then squash plants have a huge leaf that will shade the roots so that the sun, if it gets too warm, doesn't evaporate all of the moisture. So it protects those plants, the roots. So that's why those three are grown together, corn, beans, and squash. Now, I did also want to share with you some interesting, so this is popcorn, right? And it's purple. Now, this was a gift given to me when I graduated from my language course. It doesn't pop purple, it pops white, but it has a really fresh taste. I don't know how else to describe it, just very fresh tasting. But this year, which is new for me, I'm going to grow my own popcorn. And this is called strawberry popcorn. These seeds I didn't save. I bought from a place that does heritage seeds only. So you grow it, it looks just like that. It looks like little teeny tiny strawberries. And you pop it. When you pop it, you just leave the kernels right on the cob, right? And a second variety, which is blue popcorn. So those are my new seeds for corn for popping. I'm going to also try this one, orange corn. Orange corn, because orange plants have a lot of beta carotene in them, which is really healthy for you. So there's a lot of beta carotene in carrots. So I'm going to try this. I'm not sure how it's going to taste, but I'm looking forward to growing it. A few other varieties that I'm going to try this year as well are heritage varieties, so very old heirloom varieties that people don't grow commercially anymore. But it's important for those seeds to be saved and the plant to be regrown. So I have purple tomatoes. So the outside still looks red, but the inside is quite purple. So those are called Cherokee purple tomatoes. First grown by the Cherokee nation in the southern US. A striped tomato. So it's yellow and orange striped. It's called pork chop. Not really sure why, but pork chop tomato. And then this one's called a white tomato. It's really yellow, but what you'll find is a lot of varieties of yellow tomatoes are sweeter and less acidic than the red ones. Now, some people don't like tomatoes, but maybe if you tried a different variety of tomatoes, you might find one that you really like. One other seed I want to talk about. So when you're out and about, I mean, this is not a seed I'm planting, but these are seed pods, right? So the seed for a fir tree, right? In this case, a pine, but you'll find them cones, right? Conifers, those trees are called. So there's seeds, not just food plants, but it's how all plants grow is through seeds. So next slide, please. So on the next slide, you'll see some links to some activities you can do. There's also 2 Indigenous seed saving organizations there. So if you want to investigate why people are saving seeds, especially in Indigenous communities, you can explore through those sites. And Earth to Tables, which is also another site that's looking for food sovereignty for Indigenous peoples, because when the colonists came and brought other foods with them, some Indigenous communities stopped eating their traditional diets, which in some cases has not been healthy for them. So those are some things you can investigate. Next slide, please. Now, because I've done 2 previous sessions, I've had a lot of questions asked. I'm in the process of completing the answers to those, which I will forward, and then a link can be sent to you so that you can see the answers to some of the questions, things about my garden, seed saving, and those sorts of things. So I'll provide those in a document after the session. Next slide, please. So, winter's almost over. It'll be spring on March 21st during the solstice. But in the meantime, a little challenge I'm going to leave you with is when you're outside right now, just look around to see if you see any plants. They're about to disperse their seeds for the spring. So the photograph here is my grandson. Now that was with the largest sunflower head that I grew. And as you can see around the whole outside edge of that, those seeds have already been eaten by the birds. And this particular plant was probably about 18 to 20 feet tall and the head quite large. Now it had multiple heads, but that was the biggest one. So I just left the seed heads afterwards out in my backyard for the birds and the squirrels and the chipmunks. Some of the seeds should be familiar to you, like the burdock. So the little burrs that were stuck to my mitts when I went for a walk in the winter. When I asked you to think, how do seeds spread or travel? This might be something you want to think about. So it's stuck on my mitt and I brought it all the way home. Now, if I toss those out in my yard, I might end up with a burdock plant there. Birds, right? Some of those other seed pods are from my garden. So when spring comes, they'll drop those seeds and I'll get some new plants that just come up from the ground. So when you're out, have a look around. The one at the bottom with the fluff, of course, is a milkweed seed. And it's easy to figure out that that would spread by the wind, right? So I want you to think about all the different ways that seeds spread. So if a bird eats a wild raspberry, right, and then it flies and through its waste drops because the seed part, the tiny little seed part in the berry isn't digestible, seeds spread that way. So animals, people, wind, those sorts of things. Next slide, please. So I'm going to leave 2 videos for you to watch, and I'd like you to consider the following questions and have a discussion with your class. One is called the Svalbard Global Seed Vault. So that's what the video is about. I want you to think, why is it important? The other video is about the seed sanctuary at Gondege. So why are the Mohawk people of Gondege saving seeds? And how do these 2 groups play a role in ensuring food for future generations? So the seed vault, when you watch the video, they're both short, 4 to 5 minutes. You're going to discover what is in this vault. Remember, I used the word vault before. It's a place for safekeeping, right? So you're going to discover what's there. I want you to try and understand why it's there. So listen to the video and have a discussion with your class. The other video is Gondege. So it's at Tyndanaga, which is just outside of Belleville on the Bay of Quinte. They're also saving seeds, just like I do. So they grow a crop, you eat some, but you always save some. Remember that quote at the start where it says, you know, about the seeds don't really belong to you, they belong to your children, right? So it's always important to save some seeds. And you can save seeds at home. You can save seeds from a cucumber or a tomato that you might have had. And you can actually, if you plant those early in the spring inside, put them in a sunny window, you'll get a plant, right? In some cases, not always, because they have to germinate properly, but you'll get a plant that you can then plant in your garden. Next slide, please. So here you'll find the links to those 2 videos. I hope you enjoy watching. I hope that you enjoyed the workshop and that maybe a few of you will become gardeners and realize how much pleasure you get from growing your own food, the science part of it, the cultural part of it as well. So thank you for the workshop, Nyawagoa, and I will say Ona or goodbye.